Okay, continuing where we left off on page 67, we're talking about the search engine results page. And you can make your search engines a little bit more appropriate if you know some of the tricks. And so here are some operators that you can type in. So for example, you can separate words by spaces. And let me go back to here, and I'm going to say light bulbs space CFL. Okay? And what that means is anywhere where the light bulb and the compact fluorescent light CFL. So whenever those appear, now it doesn't matter, I'm going to get the exact same results if I'd done CFL light bulbs or light bulb CFL. So the order in which you type these isn't all that relevant. Okay, so space between things means add these two words together. If I, on the other hand, I was to put this in quotation marks, let's do CFL. I'm probably going to have to change the order here because otherwise I probably wouldn't get any result at all. So I'm going to put quotation marks around this. Okay, so CFL light bulbs, and then hit the return. And now I get specific. Only that term. It's not and anymore. It's exactly that phrase. Okay. And what happens is they'll search through the web pages and find those things that have the highest mix. Okay. So take a look at this little diagram here, this table about how to use or. I like the dash or the not operator. So for example, if I want to do light bulbs not CFL, so I want to do light bulbs minus CFL. Oh, by the way, the uppercase, lowercase means nothing here, okay? And so now you get an awful lot of light bulbs, and hopefully without the CFL being a major issue. Okay, you could get slightly different thing. Anyway, this is pretty cool. Take some time to take a look at this. You know, I want half of a word, you know, things of that nature. It's actually pretty cool. Okay, let's continue. Okay, the next part of the textbook, they talk about the 13 categories of web pages. Personally, I don't see any educational benefit of learning 13 categories, so I'm just going to go through it rather quickly. We're going to skip a huge chunk of this. They talk about online social networking. Yeah, you know, Facebook, things of that nature. Informational, yeah. Media sharing, yeah. News, weather, sports, okay. Educational, yay, we're doing that now. Business, government, and organizational kind of web pages. Blogs, wikis. Wiki was a very cool way of Web 2.0. Allows you to, for example, you've probably heard of Wikipedia. So if I go here and go, in fact, you know, you can get kind of close to typing, and the browser will help you out. So there, Wikipedia, cool. And so I type in kumquat, and it brings me up an article about kumquats. Now, I'm actually able to go in and edit this. If I find something that's wrong, I can hit this button and edit this. I can edit this. Isn't that pretty cool? That's Web 2.0. Okay, so wikis, and there's lots of wikis, are just this technique that allows people to edit content. Health and science, entertainment, financial, travel and mapping, shopping. Oh yeah, big time. Careers and employment, e-commerce. Okay, now that I skipped over a bunch, now we're going to go to page 77 and talk specifically about e-commerce. So what the heck is the definition of e-commerce? Well, believe it or not, the definition is kind of dumb. The real definition is any type of business that takes place over the internet. Okay, that was kind of dumb. So consider I have a brick and mortar store. Like I have a local Sears at the local mall, and I walk in there and I buy a hammer from Sears, and And then I go home and I go, that really's not the hammer that I wanted. I really want a different hammer. So let me go to their website and I'll order a hammer and I'll return the other one later. Okay, so one is an example of a brick and mortar store and the other is e-commerce. And there's categories of e-commerce. So at the bottom of the page they talk about business to business and business to consumer and consumer to consumer. Those are categories of e-commerce. We're not going to get into that much detail at this point. Okay, on page 78 they talk a little bit about how you would go about authoring a website. So here's essentially a miniature version of how it's done. So I plan on producing a web page. I probably download some software or buy some software that helps me do this. I design the web page and I'm using these web standards. I create the web page and I'm probably creating the web page on my local machine. Okay, I'm creating it, testing it, and looking at it and going, yeah, okay, it looks pretty good. And so as I'm developing it, I'm doing it on my machine. And then I have to host my website somewhere else because nobody knows the domain name of my computer at home. And no one could look it up in a domain name system because it's not registered in a domain name system. So even if I told them that my computer's name was whatever, Kumquat, they wouldn't be able to find it because it doesn't exist in the global phone book, the DNS server. Okay, so I have to contract with a third party. I have to go to some other site somewhere and pay them money to host my website. So I transfer, my website's built on my machine. I transfer the entire website up to there. And then they have a domain name system. They have the phone book. And now I just tell everybody, hey, go to kumquat.com and presto changeo, it'll find its way to wherever that website is being hosted. Okay. And then, of course, you have to maintain it afterwards. So those are briefly the steps required to generate a web page. I've got a web page out there. And when I created my web page, I wanted to get a really cool domain name that had something similar to my name. So I really wanted something like emmettgray.com. But that was already taken. So I ended up with emmett-gray.com. So I didn't actually get the exact domain name that I wanted. I wanted Emmett Gray, but doggone it, somebody else's name with that name has already taken it. Shucks. Okay. On the bottom of page 79, they talk about the media stuff. And once again, I'm kind of going to gloss over a great deal of this. They talk about graphics and animation. Here's some graphics. Cool. And here's some cool little animation. Yay! Audio stuff. Yes, you can listen to music or you can listen to video lectures. So video and virtual reality. I don't have an example of virtual reality on hand. So a graphic is some sort of a picture, some sort of a digital representation of non-text data. Okay, that's a crappy definition. Everybody knows what a graphic is. And so they talk about the popular graphic formats that the web supports natively. And typically we're talking about a BMP file extension, a GIF file extension, which is kind of sort of falling out of favor because they had lots of legal issues. PNG is probably one of the most popular ones nowadays just because it's royalty free and lawsuit free. And there's a bunch of others. But basically when you're creating a website, you got to make sure that the graphics that you're planning on putting are in one of those known formats. JPEG being the most popular for cameras as an example. Okay. On page 81, they make a reference to this thing called an infographic. There's an example over there in the corner of the page. Basically, it's just like a poster that you would print out and put on the wall. Cool stuff. Okay, whatever. Animation, of course, is just a series of still frames that you meld together and make it look like it's actually moving. Okay. Page 81, again, they talk about audio files. And most audio files are going to be compressed a great deal in order to save time and hopefully won't affect the audio quality that much. Okay, and so typically you would use a media player or your browser to listen to audio or video. Okay, So what if I wanted to go to a website and listen to an audio file format that my machine doesn't understand? Well, then on page 83, they talk about a plugin. A plugin is an add-on to your browser, in this case, Internet Explorer, that allows me to render some sort of content that's not standard. And we went through like the list of standard graphic formats, for example. Let's say, for example, there was another graphics format that Internet Explorer didn't know anything about. Well, then you can download a piece of software that installs into your browser and allows you to do that. But beware, this is a very popular way that the bad guys introduce viruses into your computer. So you go to some unscrupulous website and it says, oh, to best view this website, please install this plugin. I go, no. So the only time you should ever answer yes to should I install this plugin is if you're in a website that you know and trust and it makes sense in the context. For example, you're trying to pull down like an AutoCAD drawing and it won't render on your machine. Now you know you're pulling down an AutoCAD drawing. So you know what it is, and it's going to come up and say, you don't really have an AutoCAD viewer here. Would you like to add one? And under that context, you go, oh, I know what I'm doing, and I trust this website, so yes, I'll take the plugin. But if any other scenario other than that, then answer no and get the heck out. Okay, on page 84, they talk about the other uses of the internet. Remember we talked about how the web is a subset of the bigger internet. And so in addition to doing stuff with browsers, you also have email. So, yes, you can have email based through the web. Okay, there are web versions of Outlook, for example, but that's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about the transmission of email from one place to another. So let's talk about this transmission of email. So here's what actually happens. So I have some sort of an email application, Outlook, whatever. It doesn't really matter what it is. And so I type a message to Grandma, and I type in Grandma's email address. I hit the button. Well, the first step is it goes to my email server that provided by my internet service provider. Okay, so my ISP operates a web server. It looks at it and goes, this ain't mine. Let me see if I can figure out where this goes. And so once again, it looks it up into the DNS server and tries to figure out, okay, this needs to be sent to someplace else. And so it just forwards the email address from server to server to server to server to server until it finally ends up in the internet service provider of my grandma. Okay? So it starts with my internet service provider, goes through God only knows how many intermediate servers, and ends up with the internet service provider for Grandma. And it goes into Grandma's in-basket. So the next time that Grandma fires up her computer and fires up email, and there's my message. So lots of little steps to make it all work. And then once again, the transmission from my machine to my email server and from email server to server, none of that is web protocol. It is internet protocols, but not web protocols. Cool? Okay. So they make a distinction about email lists. My grandmother is into the knit club, and so she has a list. So people send email back and forth on an email list talking about knitting. Okay. On page 86, they talk about instant messaging. I think everyone knows what instant messaging is. Typically in a phone where you type in a cool little message or a text and send it off to whoever's listening, and they'll get a little tweet on their phone to let them know that a message occurred. Okay. We can't quite polish off this chapter in the time we got left, so let me stop right now at the 15-minute mark, and we'll finish this off in just a few.